Hi, I'm Sheila Layton. Welcome to the Beyond Coincidence Show, where every moment holds a miracle and we talk about seeing the hand of God in our lives. Call it a God wink or a tender mercy or whatever you want. Everyone on this show has seen the hand of God or their higher power in their lives in a very real and personal way. Welcome, everybody. Again, another amazing guest. Her name is Lauren Rose. She was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, but grew up primarily in St. George, Utah. She was raised a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but fell away at the age of 12 when her parents got divorced. She returned to the church on her own at the age of 25. She graduated from the University of Utah with a BS in accounting, got married to her best friend in the Salt Lake Temple, and is a mother to identical twin girls that she adores. Lauren recently stepped away from her career in private equity to focus on motherhood full-time. For the past 2.5 years, she had the opportunity to serve as executive producer of the Comeback podcast. Her love for sharing her testimony online has guided her to launch a new project, the Be Faithful, a podcast that explores challenging topics through a faithful lens in conversations with devout members of the church. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm just super happy to chat with you and to maybe learn a little bit about your new project. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And we'll chat about that later. I think maybe at the end we'll end with that. So Lauren, tell me what it's like having identical twins and what your life looks like on the day-to-day.
It's very busy. I really feel like chaos all the time. I don't know how I get anything done, but somehow it happens, and my life is full of so much joy. Like they're the most beautiful, amazing, happy little girls that I've ever met, and everyone just adores them. So I'm very blessed. It's been a great experience.
So right now you're just staying home with them. You're not doing any work. You've left the Comeback podcast. I mean, you're starting your own podcast, but right. You're not doing any other work outside the home, just full-time momming.
Yes, just a full-time mom for the first time. I mean, I was a little older when I had my girls, so I've had a career and I'm ready. I was ready to just be a mom.
Yeah. How are you? I mean, full-time momming is hard, right? Like it can be very challenging. How are you managing your own self-care and your mental health? And do you take time for yourself or you just run hard, be a mom?
I will say I run hard, be a mom. My girls keep me very busy. They actually are medically complex, so they have a lot of appointments all the time. We're actually in the middle of an intensive physical therapy right now that's Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. for 3 weeks. So I don't even have time to miss my job. I am so busy with these girls. But yeah, so honestly, self-care is not a big thing for me, but I do prioritize my mental health. I have done trauma therapy for the last 3.5 years, and I do it like every other week on a Thursday evening, and I don't miss it. I do not miss it. That is like my me time. And
good for you.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get into that as we get down the episode, because I don't actually know what that is. Maybe I need it. Who knows?
These days, everybody needs it.
I think everybody needs therapy of some kind, right? I think everybody needs to talk their stuff through. I for sure agree with that. Okay, so Lauren, let's go back and tell me about life growing up, because I know there was a lot going on, and this is why you're in therapy. But let's just get into that for a little bit, because I feel like that sets the stage for your life going forward.
Totally. So I was born into the covenant in Salt Lake City, Utah. My parents were married in the Salt Lake Temple, both grew up LDS. And yeah, I was baptized when I was 8. And I wouldn't say we were like the most,
How many kids in your family, and where do you fit in?
Just 3. I'm the middle child. I have an older brother and a younger sister, who neither of them are in the church currently. But I reflect a lot and think pretty deeply about things. And I've always wondered, like, why it was a struggle for us children to go to church. Like, we just didn't want to go. It was like, kicking and screaming out the door. And I think that, and I know this is just speculation, but I kind of wonder sometimes is because we didn't go every Sunday, so we knew it was an option.
Oh, okay.
And so if we would have been in the habit of just like really staunch going every single Sunday, it would never have really, and maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like maybe we wouldn't have questioned it so much. Like, oh, if I wear you down enough, we just won't go,
Sure,
like,
kids are smart. Absolutely.
yeah.
We can
So
manipulate at the age of 5.
it's true, or younger. But yeah, so I never really understood why we hated church so much, but yeah, so but we did go consistently, inconsistently, if that makes sense. But about the age of 12, quit going for like a whole year. My parents were fighting a lot and they ended up getting divorced. And when you're that young, you don't understand mental health and like mental disorders and whatnot. And I didn't realize that my dad has some serious mental health issues. And so that my parents got divorced and he just did not handle it very well and just really kind of fell off the deep end and started drinking and then started using drugs.
Now,
And
so when they got divorced, were you with your mom or your dad?
I started with my mom. We did some flip flopping. She ended up, at this point, we're in St. George. And I was with her until she decided she wanted to move up north. And I didn't want to go because I had my friends and like that's where I would go to escape, the family drama. And so
Sure.
I didn't want to move, when I'm in junior high school and I don't know anybody and I'm, really confused about life. And so I stayed in St. George with my dad. And
Was it just you and the other 2 kids went with your mom?
no, we all actually stayed with my dad at
Oh,
first
all
because
3 of you did.
nobody wanted to leave St.
And
George.
by now you're like 14,
I'm about 15, 14 or 15. Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
brother then, or your brother's older than you. Now he's like high school, 16, 17 years old. Those are some
Yes.
super
Yes.
impressionable years.
Yes. And my younger sister, she has type 1 diabetes. And she started to realize faster than me that staying with dad was not a good idea. And he just wasn't being responsible with her diabetes. He wasn't taking care of it. So she didn't really have an option. And she moved up north with my mom. And my mom was brokenhearted that we didn't follow her. Honestly,
Sure.
we all should have. But I think that
As
we
a mom,
also
you can get it now, right?
I can't. Oh, I feel so bad about it. But I think we were young and naive and we kind of looked at her as like she was the one who chose the divorce. And so we were all kind of mad at her about it. So
Sure.
that was probably another reason we stayed. But
And I'm assuming church was off the table at this point.
yeah, and at this point, nobody's going to church. My mom had quit going and my dad quit going, so nobody's going. So let's see. My sister ends up going up. I stayed through high school, but things were getting pretty bad. And it's so, you know, I think back at that time and I really buried what was going on. I never told my friends like how bad it was. And I just really let that shame get to me and I just felt like, if I would have been open, things could have changed and I could have had a better experience, but Satan didn't want me to. And he knew that if I buried it and stayed, that I would continue to be miserable. And I
Are you
wish I
talking
would,
shame of your decisions or shame about how bad your dad was
yeah, shame from my dad.
life was?
Right.
Because
It
he
was
started to
really
spiral pretty badly then.
Yeah, it was really embarrassing because my fundamental years of growing up as a child, I was taught the gospel, I was taught this certain way of life. And then my dad is like completely on the other end of the spectrum. And I was just like so confused.
Right. You're
And
taught family is important, your health is important, don't drink, don't smoke. And now he is, you're not having a family, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
your dad's off the rails with who knows, drugs and alcohol or
mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
And so that messes with your head pretty good.
Yeah, I was very lost, very lost. And so I would just gravitate, I had a couple best friends and they, came from good families. And I honestly, I spent a ton of time at their houses. I slept there a lot. I would honestly just go home, get clothes and like leave sometimes. Like I did not spend time at home. But then when I started hanging out with some older guys and they were like smoking pot and partying. And so like me and my friends, we didn't have a lot of supervision. And so we started to do that. And so then I could just go home and steal like some vodka from my dad. And then we've got these young girls who I'm like supplying our own liquor. And so we were just doing whatever we wanted all the time. And it was a miracle that nothing really bad happened. Like, yeah. So, at this point though in my life, like I didn't think about church anymore. Like I had forgotten so much of it. Like it was like it was erased from my mind. But and I also did feel abandoned by God. I don't know. I can't say at a young age that I really knew that like God loved me or that God was real. Like I never had like this really spiritual experience when I was young. And so
And
as things
so you went to church occasionally, but did your family, did your mom and dad talk about God, a
Oh
relationship
yeah,
with
yeah.
God?
Yeah, like I would the only times I really remember praying were, well, if my sister was having like a diabetic episode where she would get really low and it would get scary, like I remember I would really just get on my knees and pray, or if I like lost something, I would pray to find it. But I can't say that I ever like had this like knowledge of I really knew that God was there. It was like a childlike faith, you know,
Sure.
like you believe because your parents tell you, and then as you get older and your parents stop living that way, you're just like, well, was this ever true? And then I don't really think I questioned so much because they never stopped. I don't think either of them actually ever stopped believing in God ever,
Yeah.
but I did because they stopped talking about it. And then
And it wasn't a priority, right? At that
no,
point, you
not
were
at
having
all.
fun doing what you wanted to do. So why would you bring God into the story?
Yeah, well, and I wouldn't say I was even necessarily having fun. Like when I was drinking to suppress emotions. I was getting drunk and blacking out all the time. I wasn't like having this fun time in high school. People probably thought I was still like I was a cheerleader still, and I got decent grades up until my senior year. And that's when I was really just struggling like mentally and emotionally with my home life. So, yeah, I'm sure out on the outside, people thought I was just having fun. But on the inside, like I felt like I was dying. I just couldn't. It was hard to cope. It was hard to cope as a 16-year-old girl that had no self esteem and no more direction in her life and just felt really abandoned by her family and abandoned by God. And then and without really consciously thinking about it, I think I came to the resolution that just there was no God, because if there was, there's no way he would let this happen to me. So that's how I wasn't like proclaimed atheist, but I think I had gotten to that point when I was about like 17 years old. And I was pretty angry. I was angry for sure. I was an angry teenager, and I was angry at the church because they had let me down, and not necessarily the church, but just church in general. I just saw all religion as like just phony baloney, I guess. But yeah,
For
so
sure. I can see that, right? You just felt betrayed.
yeah, yeah,
Everything
definitely.
that you'd been taught now wasn't a thing, and you were just broken.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very depressed, and I was hanging out with the wrong guys and just not staying true to my baptismal covenants and getting farther and farther away from the spirit until, it was completely gone from my life. And so I lived that way. Yeah, so um so after I graduated high school, I did end up moving up to Salt Lake to be with my mom. I graduated high school early, and what's funny enough is I did BYU packets to graduate early. I don't think I really realized that they were was it BYU pathways or something to finish high school like a semester, half a year early. So I did that, moved up to Salt Lake to be with my mom and my sister. And my mom still never really knew how bad it was getting in St. George with my dad, and
So
that he
you
was
never talked to
really
her about it.
no, I hid it because I knew that I would probably have to move if I told her. So I was like hiding what was going on
And so,
because I didn't
but
want her to know.
you were like you were halfway through your senior year, and you decided, okay, I'm ready to go now because it was so bad, or you just didn't have good friends, or what made you go?
Yeah, because it was so bad. My dad had gone to jail. He was dating this woman who was really abusive to me, and she would lock me out of the house every day. I actually had to break into my own house after high school, like every day just to go home. And she was bad. And it was intolerable. I couldn't live there anymore. So I ended
It's
up
a
moving in
miracle
with
that you
my
even graduated from high school, honestly, Lauren. Like, it's a miracle.
and I've thought a lot about that. I've had, I have a mentor who helped. I can talk about him later. He helped me come back to the church, and he would tell me all the time, he's like, I cannot believe that you are who you are. I cannot believe that, like you just said, you graduated high school, you're going to college, you have a stable job, like it was a miracle. So I've thought about it a lot. And I think that because of those formative years, my early years of going to church, having the gospel in my life, my mom was really, supportive of us kids doing a lot of like extracurricular type stuff. Like she always made sure we were in dance. I did gymnastics. We did sports. I was a smart kid, but I was also like older. Like my birthday's in October. So I was ahead of a lot of my classmates. And I think that helped me build my confidence. And so I think that I got a really good, solid kind of groundwork under my feet before all of this real trauma happened. Otherwise, I don't know like who I
Right.
would be right now or where I would have ended up, honestly.
You had a small foundation, right? You
I
had
think
that
I
small,
had,
stable foundation. Although it cracked, you still had it, right?
yeah, it was really, really helpful to have all of that. If I would have been born into that situation of being in a meth house or something, I don't think there's any way that I would have ended up where I am today. I mean, you never know, actually. You really never know. There's some
No.
real miracle stories and God can do a lot of things. So
Yeah.
maybe just delete that, delete that part.
Yeah. You never know, right? You never know.
Yeah.
So now you're like up in Salt Lake with your mom.
Hmm.
And what happens then?
So I continue to just kind of party and I make friends up here and I have some friends that moved up here from St. George too. And so I'm still like partying. And then as soon as I'm old enough to go to the bars, I go to bars. And
So you weren't doing college then right out of high school.
I was, sorry. I was very ambitious at first. And so while I was still in high school, I was starting to go to Salt Lake Community College. But I can't remember at what point. I think it was the recession. That's how old I am. I think during the recession, I took a break from college so I was just kind of partying and going to school part time. And then I finally decided that I was going to go back. I think that, okay, so at this point, I'm feel like I'm just failing at life. Like I can't find a good guy. I would always date these guys that were just dead end, like kind of emotionally unavailable, narcissistic, like people like my dad, honestly. But I couldn't figure it out. And I was so frustrated. And I, of course, am just always like, what's wrong with me kind of stuff. And so I still wasn't happy. I was still just drinking because it was like an escape for me. And I was on, somebody said this in a comeback episode and I related with it so much. And she was just like, I was on a fast track to nowhere. And that's like exactly how I felt. I was like on a fast track to nowhere. I would have a job, but it was kind of a dead end job. And I was supporting myself, completely financially supporting myself.
So you weren't living with your mom then by this point.
Oh, I think I moved out when I was 2021. So by the age of 20, I was completely financially supporting myself and doing school part-time, and then obviously paused that, like we said. So then I get this job. It's kind of, I think, when we're starting to get out of the recession, and these men were just like really, really good men. And here's actually, I think this was completely meant to be. I remember applying for this job and I was unqualified. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to apply anyway, which is not like me. But they got my resume, and it was a private equity firm, and one of their portfolio companies, like they were using that HR person to like review resumes. And she saw the last name and she recognized it because my sister was working there. And so she was like,
Oh, you didn't know.
no, I had no idea, because on the posting they didn't put the name of the company. And so I just saw the role and I was like, oh, I could totally do this. Like their qualifications were like that I needed to be graduated, but I was like, I can do all these things.
Right.
And so they were like, is this your sister? And so I ended up getting my foot in the door, and
Oh, wow.
I ended up getting the job. Years later, I found out that I was up against the owner's daughter for that exact position, and they chose me instead. And I had no idea. And I look back at that and I'm like, that was the hand of God, because
Absolutely.
absolutely, it was these men. I started watching them and they were such good men. And everybody respected them so much. And they just didn't seem to have any drama in their lives. And I just remember looking at them and being like, I want to be like them. Like I want to be that stable and that strong and that respected. Like I just admired them so much. And so
And they were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes, all three of them were, and or are.
And you had no role model like that in your life, right? Up until the
No,
point.
no, because all the men that I was, surrounded with were just, my friends going to bars.
Your
I
dad?
I don't I hadn't worked for LDS people either, actually. When I think back about my employers, none of them were LDS before that. Yeah, I think so then I'm dating this guy. He breaks up with me and I'm just devastated because I'm just like, I can't take another failure. Like, I just felt so, and I didn't have God. I didn't have this foundation of like, of really having hope for anything next. And I was just tired. Yeah. So I think that is when and I was thinking about the church because of these men. And so, oh, I always forget to talk about this part. There was a time in my life where I did get sick, and my grandma was dying, and I promised her in the hospital the last time I saw her that I would read the Book of Mormon. She was very devout, and I don't know why I made that promise, but I think I just wanted to like say something to like make her happy before she died. And I just always felt like I have to keep that promise. You promised her on her deathbed that you would read the Book of
Yeah,
Mormon,
what kind of a granddaughter am I if I don't?
right? Like, and so when
But
I
you
got
kind of had
sick,
forgot about that, I'm assuming, right? For a few
yeah, I'm
years.
trying to remember at what point in the timeline I read that where I was working. I think it was probably when I started at this private equity firm. It was about the same
And
time.
that
So
thought
it
just kind
was.
of came back to you, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I promised grandma.
No, 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 no. I think I promised her when I was the first year that I worked at this private equity firm is the year she died. And that's when I promised it. So then I get sick and I read the Book of Mormon. And
You just decided I'm going to read the Book of Mormon kind of
well,
randomly.
I was home. I was home a lot. I had made that promise. And so I was decided to read it. But scripture was so foreign to me that I felt like it just all went over my head. Like, I wasn't like having any spiritual experiences. Like, I was just like, okay, well, like, check that off the box. Like, go back to my old ways. And then the breakup happens and I'm just devastated. And I was just like, I was so humble. And I was so, it was a knee bending experience for me. I remember I just got on my knees and I didn't believe in God, but I was just like, I have to figure this out. I can't figure life out. And so I like looked up my local singles ward and went to church one Sunday and I blended in so well. Like, no one had any idea. They just thought I was probably like a new girl or whatever. And then I get called into the bishop's office and I was like, oh, he probably wants to like ask me all these questions and figure out like what I'm doing here because I'm not worthy to be here or something.
Oh dear,
And
you're playing all kinds of mind games.
yeah, I was so stressed out. I was like, what is he going to ask me? So I go in there and he was going to extend me a calling. And I was like, oh, I don't think I can have a calling. And then so I like spill the beans and tell him. And I think he's just like floored, like, what? This girl just walks in and starts coming to church. Like, and yeah, so he
Who does
decides
that?
I know. And I look back at that, I'm like, what a crazy time. So he starts setting me up with the ward missionaries. And I don't think we got very far through the lessons for I don't remember why. Uh yeah, I think I started making friends in the ward. I actually recognized a girl from high school. We started hanging out and she would go to the temple once a week. And so I just had these amazing influences that God put right in my path. And it's always the people that he knows that like I would need, somebody that would make an impression on me, just like my
Yeah,
bosses.
yeah.
He knew that those were the type of men that I needed to admire, to want to like kind of emanate them. And so yeah, when I was going to church and I started really listening and things started happening for me, I was just so open to the spirit. I just remember soaking everything in like a sponge, and it was like everything that had been taken away from my memory when I was a teenager, it all just came flooding back. And people would just quote scripture and I would just be like, or just say these things and I'd be like, everything they're speaking is truth. And I knew it because I had lived it. One scripture that would always come to mind is wickedness never was happiness. I was doing that to be happy, and it was only making me more miserable.
Right.
And when I say doing that, like drinking and all those things, and so I just knew, and I had so many emotions. Like that first year of coming back to the church is such a pivotal, poignant time of my life that I really like. It's almost like my life started over that year. It's like I didn't even think like pre reconversion. It was like my life started over, and I just looked forward and was moving forward and wanting to learn as much as I could about the gospel. And I did. I read so many books. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you feel accepted? Like, were there times when you felt I shouldn't be here, or people would say something unkind, or did you sort of just progress and feel fully accepted right from the beginning? Like, did Satan play tricks with you as far as I shouldn't be here,
Yeah.
I'm not worthy, or did it just kind of start flowing and light just
I
came in?
it was really well. I had intentions to actually go to other churches because I wanted to really study other religions and make the decision that I wanted to make and figure out the truth. And I went to a couple, but I just wanted to keep going back to the LDS church because of the spirit that I felt there, and everything they were saying. I just knew it was true. And so I think people in that particular ward had kind of found out that I was like investigating. And so I think everybody was just like really nice to me at that point. I don't remember anybody making me feel like I wasn't supposed to be there. And they were all so welcoming that I don't think I ever had the thought that I didn't deserve it at that point. But I remember a lot of people bearing testimony about the witness that they received about the Book of Mormon, or that the church was true, or about Joseph Smith. And I remember I just like kept hearing these stories, and I was like, I want to have one of these experiences. It was like I had the faith that they really had it. And so I don't know if that's why I was able to get such a strong answer, but it was also because I was so humble, I believe, and brokenhearted. Because, Christ says we need to offer up a broken
And
heart
you
and a
had put
contrite.
the work in, right? Like, you had been trying to learn the gospel and do all the reading for how long? Like a year before you
Well,
had?
sorry, I just went back. This is at the very beginning. So I'm just going to church at this point. So in the beginning, I started hearing people bear witness about their witnesses. And so one of my friends in Sunday school said, if you want a big answer, and it's funny because I wasn't telling people I wanted this big answer, but it was almost like the classes were about this. And it was like, well, this is what I want. And we're talking about it. Just another thing that God was just like guiding me through, helping me
You
to,
were thinking and pondering this, and all of a sudden, all the lessons were
and that,
about
and
receiving
that,
answers to
that
prayer.
happened to me so much that first year. But I remember someone saying, like, if you want you can't be a 50-watt light bulb in a 100-watt circuit. You need to be like the right wattage, right? Or however she worded it. I don't remember it. And I went home and I prayed, and I was like, hey, Heavenly Father, I want that 100-watt answer. Like, I want to be wired for it. I want it so bad. And, like within a couple days, I remember my brother came over, and I was making him dinner, and we were just hanging out, and I was super excited to tell him that I was going to church, and like how wonderful it was, and how it just been filling my life with so much light. And I started to tell him that I was noticing that anytime I did something for God, I would get something back. And as soon as I testified of that to him, I got my 100-watt answer, and it was the most incredible experience of my entire life. My entire body felt like it was like buzzing, like every nerve, everything in my body. I thought I was floating. I literally felt like I was floating. And I remember
Wow.
looking down to see if I was floating, and my brother's just staring at me like, what are you doing? And I'm sure it lasted like 5 seconds, but it felt like a minute. Uh and then after, it just went away, and I just sat there, and I was like, my gosh, it's real. It's true. Everything's true. And that's
Wow.
when I started reading everything, and everything changed. And I was so intense that, like, I would hang out with people sometimes, but at this point, like, I just wanted to read. I just wanted to read about the gospel. I was just like eating it up so much. And then I can't remember why I wanted to move. I think I wanted roommates. And so, because I was living alone at the time. And so I ended up moving into this ward. I was there very briefly, but at that time I had gotten an impression to serve a mission.
You'd moved from a young single adult ward to a family ward?
No, I never went to a family ward until I got married. So I did my whole conversion in the YSA, which is so wild now that I'm like
That's
looking
awesome.
back at it. But,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
awesome.
there are some things that I loved about the YSA ward and some things that I really didn't.
Sure.
The nice thing about being single when I was going through this process is I had so much time to myself to study, figure out
Ponder.
who I was. Like at this point in my life, I think I was truly finding myself because when you're drinking all the time, you are hiding a lot of things and you can't really find yourself when you're not sober. You just can't. And
So you
so
moved
I
into
was
this other ward.
yeah, so I'm going to a new ward. I am not living with members though. I ended up moving in with a couple friends that from St. George, but I was still very like into the church. I didn't waver by being around them. And yeah, so I wanted to go on a mission. Or sorry, it was general conference and I was watching it by myself and I was just totally glued to it. I didn't miss a word and I just loved it. And I just remember thinking like, oh, these old men are so cute. And like I
And you
just
just felt the
loved
spirit
it.
with every talk.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was
Was
and
it, but
then
for you, was it kind of like drinking from a fire hose a little bit? I mean, there was so much information coming into your brain, or could you
you
just
know
handle it all?
you know what's incredible is I handled it all. I did. It was amazing. And I think that was another act of God because when I was in college, that's not how it worked. But with the gospel, it was like so easy to remember. I was honestly, for that year of my life of coming back, I felt like I had this steady stream of revelation just constantly. Like with the Holy
Wow.
Ghost, it was like I would have so many thoughts that were just revelation and telling me like this is actually something I've never shared with anyone. I remember one time it was like putting the keys in. I remember this moment so vividly, but I was putting the keys in the door to walk into my apartment, and it hit me that the truth that God was always with you and could see everything that you'd ever done. It hit me so strong that it actually made my knees weak because I was like, he has seen everything, like not in a good way, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just moments, I had moments like that all the time. And so I was listening to conference and so into it. And then at the end, I was like, I didn't want it to be over. And at the time, I was reading The Infinite Atonement by Tad Collister. And so I picked up that book and I started reading that right after conference. And I don't know if my
And
roommates
that's
read it
pretty
or
deep.
well, I loved that book.
But
So
you know what I mean? Like for somebody who's just investigating the gospel like you were really, that's a pretty deep book.
I read some really deep books, but like I said, I just digested all of them so easily. I didn't forget it. It just fed me and it built me up and I
Wow.
understood it. And I actually started re-listening to that book a couple years ago and I couldn't get as into it. I was like, why did I think this was so good? This is kind of hard to listen to. But at that point, too, I was also reading a tangible book, which was, I feel like it's easier for me to get into it when I'm reading. I just don't have time
Right.
to do that anymore. But there was a moment where I actually, because I had that answer that I had just previously spoken about of my, 100-watt answer, that was from God. Still didn't fully understand who Jesus is. So at this point, I'm just thinking like Heavenly Father, right? And so I wanted to get a testimony of Jesus Christ, which is why I read The Infinite Atonement. One of my bosses that was a good example to me, he told me to read that book. And so that's when I started to read The Infinite Atonement. And the chapter on the Garden of Gethsemane is what I was reading right after conference. And there was something about me reading about his suffering that the Spirit just testified to me and just spoke to me that it really happened and that like I was just filled with so much love in that moment. Like it wasn't quite as intense as that 100-watt answer. It was like it just filled my whole body. It filled the whole room. I just was energized by it and I just started sobbing and I was just like, I know who you are. I believe in you. Like and then I just felt all this love and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to serve a mission. I
Well, yeah, because you wanted to share that with everybody else, right?
yes,
You wanted to
yes.
share that love that you felt with everybody, of course.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I decide that night that I'm going to serve a mission. I go into work the next day and I tell one of my bosses, my one that was like my mentor. He's not the one who told me about the infinite atonement, but that doesn't matter. I went into his office and I was like, I'm serving a mission. I got a witness after conference. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And he got emotional and then I had to leave and go run an errand for them. And I came back and he's like, hey, I talked to my wife and we're going to help you pay for your mission. And I was just like, oh my
Aw.
gosh, this is really going to happen. And like, I was really just so excited about it. And then I went to talk to the bishop about it in this ward that I had just come into, didn't know anybody. Like I don't know how many weeks I even went to that ward at that time yet. And that bishop like shut me down. And I was not expecting that, but I was sitting outside his office waiting to go in. And before I went in, I had like a prompting that was like, they're going to try and stop you. And I was like, what a weird thought. And then I went in and he was like, a mission's not a vacation. And I was like, excuse me? Like this guy, to his, like, not credit, but he had no idea.
For the reason why he acted the way he did is what?
There is no real reason to treat someone like that, but he had no idea who I was. He had no idea what I'd been through. He had no idea that I was on like this conversion journey. And
Lauren, I am so sorry, because that is terrible. Like, I've heard the flip side of that, right? Where people go in and they kind of feel like, oh, I've had a bad past. And the bishops are so kind and so nice. And you had the opposite experience. Like, that's terrible. There's no excuse for that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
know. But I realize they're just men.
Yeah.
And if they're a little bit older,
which
things were, like even 10 years ago, things were much more black and white than they are now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And still, it's not an excuse, but I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I don't think it, I was more surprised and annoyed with him, like, because at this point,
I don't want to, you're better than me, because I don't wanted to punch him in the face. I'd have been super pissed.
I definitely was. I told him, I was like, you know what? I've been through a lot of hard things. Like, I've had a pretty rough life.
You have no idea.
I was like, this is not a vacation for me. And then I can't remember how much I actually told him, but then he was like, well, you're going to need to talk to the stake president and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay. And so every week I'd bug him and be like, have you talked to the stake president? Because he said like he had to request it. And like, he never would. He said, oh, he's like, oh, I forgot. And so there was one Saturday that I went to an activity, which I didn't go to activities very often because I was still like transitioning and like hanging out with my friends. And then I'd go to church on Sundays. I wasn't like,
but you weren't partying then.
Partying at all, but I would like still hang out with my friends, not necessarily like church friends, I guess, because I was living with those girls that weren't active. So this particular Saturday, I went to this activity and we were cleaning like a girls' school or something. And I'm in this bathroom scrubbing the tile on my hands and knees next to this woman. And she is just so lovely, like super bubbly, very open and talkative and warm. And she's just like, so like, tell me about yourself, having no idea who I am. And so I start telling her my conversion story and she is like blown away. And here I'm thinking that this is like very common, like, oh, I'm sure everybody in the church has had this experiences like me, right? And so I don't think it's a big deal. And I'm just like, oh yeah, this is happening in my life and I really want to serve a mission, but I can't get a hold of the stake president because my bishop won't call him. And she looks at me and she's like, my husband is the stake president. And I was like, are you serious? Yeah, I know. And I was like, whoa. She's like,
I think not.
I know, right? And so I can't remember if she gave me his number or his secretary's number, but I ended up getting to meet with the stake president because I just, went around the bishop because he was a dud. And
yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah. And you know what? That meeting with him was such a wonderful meeting. I reflect on it, every once in a while. It was one of my favorite repentance meetings. I was never like had any sort of, I don't remember the new wording they use. The old wording is like disfellowship or excommunication. Now it's like removal of records and
whatever. Yeah. So none of that happened.
No. I think they understood. I was so young when it all happened and didn't understand a lot of what.
Well, and you had made no covenants, so why?
I mean, baptismal covenants, but yeah, I just, I was just so young and put into such a difficult situation. And
so he was kind, the stake president.
Well, he was amazing. He was amazing. And I remember leaving that meeting and I told him about the witness that I received. And he told me that, it's very similar to, I think it was the Book of Enoch. Is the Book of Enoch the one that's only one chapter? And he like goes up into the mountains and prays like all day. He compared what I had went through to that and how he had been full of charity for all men. And that was the love of Christ. And that is what I was feeling. And that's why I wanted to serve a mission. And he wasn't discouraging me, but he said, like, this is the explanation of what you were feeling. And if you want to pursue a mission, I will help you with that. But like, I want you to know that it's not like a requirement for you or anything. And so after that, it had been quite a bit of time since I had actually received that prompting. And I was like at this point in the accounting program at the U, and it's a pretty competitive program to get into there. And so I was kind of like, I don't want to delay even more because I took time off school already, you know? And so I decided not to serve a mission, but
But at that point, it was your decision,
yes,
right? It wasn't that other people discouraged you and said you're not worthy. You just had decided that, hey, I would rather take this other path, which is your agency, which is what you needed.
right. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
But I will say I always felt guilty. I always, for a long time, beat myself up that I didn't actually go serve a mission. That's actually why I feel very fortunate to be able to work on podcasts, because I feel like this is my mission now. And so it helps to like fulfill that yearning that I had to spread the gospel. So yeah, but oh yeah, I will say when I exited that meeting, I felt so good. I felt so light, and just like this huge weight had been lifted. Like I had poured my soul out to this guy, and he was so kind. And I love him so much. His name was President Featherstone. And yeah, so that was what repentance was like for me. And after that, I just was grinding in school, living this single ward life. And then I finished school, moved into a different house because I just needed to move after school. I would graduate. I was like, I can't be in the singles ward forever. I got to change singles wards.
Yeah.
So I moved downtown. I was working downtown. And I got a new job. I had left the job that I had converted at, and that was really hard. That was sad. I loved them, but I'm still friends with my one mentor. We're still good friends. His daughter, Lizzie, actually did the branding for my podcast, Be Faithful. So that was really
nice. Cool. Very nice. So when you graduated, so you hadn't met your husband yet after you graduated university. You still hadn't met him.
No, I met him.
What's your husband's name?
Gordon.
Yeah,
I met Gordon. I want to say, gosh, it might have only been a couple months after. When did we get married? I can't remember if it was 2017. I think we dated through 2017. Okay, so no, I met him the following year after I graduated. And then we dated for a year and got married. And we were just doing that. And then
I know that you kind of have the gift of dreams, right?
Oh, like that's right. I haven't talked about that yet.
Dreams are something that's not something for me. Like that doesn't happen to me ever. Only maybe once or well, the first year after my mom died, I had dreams about her, and I think that was from the Lord. But other than that, I don't. So I know that is a gift really for you. So do you want to just share one experience of where a dream sort of prepared you for something?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. I apologize. So let's think. So I get married, we get pregnant, and it's early on in my pregnancy. And I remember there was one Sunday that I was sitting on the couch and I was reading a talk by Elder Holland. And I can't remember which talk it was, but then I just fell asleep because that's what you do in your first trimester. I had this dream, and I dream a lot. I always have dreams, but it's usually like my subconscious working something out. But I also have these other types of dreams that are so real, and they feel like they're just real life. They're so potent. And I fell asleep and I started having one of these dreams. And I was walking down this dark hallway with a light at the end. And it was just like an open doorway. And I walked to the end of the hallway, and a voice said, walk towards the light. So I walked towards it, and I stop, and I'm at the edge of a cliff. And I look down and I see, the cliff, and the voice just says jump. And without even thinking about it, I just jump. And all of a sudden, I'm falling, and it feels so real. So I'm starting to kind of freak out and panic. But then all of a sudden I got filled with the Spirit of God, and I started to fly. And I wish I could remember that feeling right now, because it was just like, when you have these moments, it's nothing. I have these dreams sometimes where you feel these moments, and you feel this emotion and these feelings that I've never felt in my waking life, never felt them before. And I was just full of God, and it gave me it was almost like I was completely unstoppable. Like nothing could hurt me. Everything was fine. I was so happy. I was safe. It was just so much faith. And I just started flying, and I'm flying and I'm flying, and I look down and I'm flying over this big city on a coast, and it's sunny and there's the ocean. And then I start flying straight up into the sky, and these white things start falling. And I was just like, oh no, they're going to hit me, but they never do. And I look down and they just pass me by and they fall into the city. And then I woke up. And the next day I found out I was having twins, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe that's why I had this dream. And so I just attribute it to that. But But farther down the road, we end up going on like a baby moon, and we ended up going to Los Angeles because our original plans got canceled. And I ended up having the girls while we were out there at 27 weeks. And
Ooh,
there
so
was
two
no
preemies.
sign. Yeah, very premature. Didn't get any of my third trimester. So that was really out of the blue. I had such a healthy pregnancy. Like nobody was expecting that. My doctor was like, oh, you're fine to travel for at least like
Sure.
6 more weeks, you know? And so I was just like, well, let's just real quick go stay with my family in Los Angeles because our other trip got canceled because of the forest fires. And so we went there and we were there for like 2 days, and then the girls came. And I didn't realize that I actually think I was in labor even on the drive down, which is really terrifying to think about. But I thought that they were just like pains from getting so big because I was like full term or bigger than full term at 6 months. I was huge because I have a very short torso. So everything was
So there wasn't a lot of room for these babies.
yeah. Yeah, I'm short. So we end up in the NICU at the hospital at UCLA, Ronald Reagan, and it was an incredible hospital. I didn't know, but it was like third in the nation, best of state, I think. And so it was a huge, huge blessing. At the time, we didn't realize it, but the girls had to be on like less oxygen because we were at sea level. It just had
all the little miracles of why you were in LA.
Yes, there were so many miracles. The members in that area just came together for us. They started telling their wards about who we were and what was going on with us. And they started sending us like gift cards to Target or places to go out and eat and offering to have us over for dinner. This one woman showed up with like a trunk full of clothes for us. Like it was just incredible. It was so incredible. And so one miracle though also was the day that I was in labor. I had a friend that lived in Hermosa, which is just south of Los Angeles, and we were going to go see her. I had the girls on a Sunday. We were going to go see her that Monday. And so she was calling me while I was like in the hospital having these contractions. She had no idea. She's a member, and she was calling me to make plans for the next day. And she's like, hey, what are you doing? How's it going? And I was just like, oh, I'm actually having the twins right now. And she was like, what? And I would think I was just like in shock. I'm just like, yep, they're coming. And she was like, well, we're passing. She's like, where are you? And I told her we were at UCLA. She's like, we're passing the off ramp right now. Like, do you want me to get off? Her husband, Jason, she's like, he can come and give you a blessing with Gordon. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I would love that. So literally she called me just in time to get off and come to the hospital. And he came in at literally the girls were like on their way out, and the doctors were like, you've got to get this blessing like 2 hours ago, like we have to do this C-section. And he came in right at the very last minute, and I got a blessing, and then I went in for my C-section. So that was just another act of God that was just amazing. And so after we have the girls, I wanted to go stay. No, I didn't want to stay with my family because it was going to be a long time and I was under a lot of stress and I just needed space. So we ended up getting accepted to stay at the Ronald McDonald House. And I had volunteered at the one in Salt Lake, and the one in Salt Lake is like very nice and new. And that was not the case with the one in Los Angeles.
Oh, shoot.
So, I get there and I was like, I don't know if I want to stay here. So like a
Star One motel.
It was like a motel, like 2 motel beds, just not where I wanted to be. And I just remember sitting down on this bed, looking at around where I was, and I just broke down and just started bawling. I missed my girls so much. I wanted to be with them so bad, and it just killed my heart. And I just remember thinking, like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, why is this happening to me? Like, I've already been through so much in my life. Like, I thought that my teenage years were my Abrahamic trial. Like, what is going on? And that night I remembered I started thinking about the dream that I had. And I was like, I just had this deep, deep sense of knowing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was flying over Los Angeles in that dream, the sunny beach, the big city on the coast, and the ocean. And I was like, he always knew. He knew that this is where we were supposed to be, and this is where we were going to end up with the girls. And then that feeling that I had in my dream when I was flying, that I could do anything and that God was with me and I was full of faith. I knew that that's what he was saying. And that carried me through the NICU experience. Anything scary, anything that started to be questionable with the girl's health or anything, I held on to that feeling, and I was like, everything is going to be okay. He's already told me it's going to be okay. And it did. And my one friend that lived out there, she was always just like, I don't know how you're holding it together. I would not be holding it together like you are. But it was just like, deep down, I knew that it was going to be okay. And so
that's beautiful that he prepared you.
He did. And so that's one of the dreams that he's had that has prepared me for something that's coming. And I read something in the book of, was it Ether? It's like Ether chapter 9. It talks about, like one of the kings that has a dream and warns him to like leave and take his family and to go find the Nephites. And I read that the other day and I thought of my dreams and I was like, that's exactly probably what he experienced. And so, it was just really cool to like put that together with the scriptures and to realize, that God has always been doing this for us, And I feel like these moments of when the veil is more thin and I have these dreams is when I'm really, submersing myself in the gospel, when I'm really diligent about reading my scriptures and listening to conference talks and drawing near to God. I have them more frequently. So it's really just an incredible, incredible gift and blessing.
Lauren, that's beautiful. You've had some beautiful experiences. The Lord obviously needs you and wants you. So tell me really quickly, you have started a podcast. Let people know what the name of what it is and where they can find you on Instagram. And then we'll go with the final question of why do you think it's important to recognize the hand of God in your life?
Okay. Yeah. So I am starting a podcast called Be Faithful, which releases June 9th. And I want to have conversations with members of the church about just challenging questions and kind of difficult topics. I really get fired up when I see anti-stuff online, which I wasn't paying attention to until I started working with Comeback. And I would just get so fired up, and I still do. And I'm like, I'm just going to respond to it, but in a very, respectful and spiritual way, because I believe that there's always something spiritual about what's going on, and I can always relate it to the gospel. And so in these, that's kind of what I'll do, is just talk about specific topics in a spiritual lens, a faithful lens.
I love it. All right. So tell me, why do you think it's important to recognize the hand of God in your life?
I mean, my life story is the perfect example, because I just don't know how people do it without God. I couldn't do it without God. Granted, not everybody gets handed that, deck of cards or whatever, but he can help you through so much. You can do so much more with God than you could ever do on your own. He will strengthen you through trials, and, he's not going to take them away, but when you keep your covenants, you are not going to be making stupid choices that will cause even more heartache. But I'm not saying that won't, you'll still have heartache, but it's so much easier to go through it with God. And when you start to look for his hand in your life, you see it more and more. And it's comforting, and it helps you to have some assurance of, I'm making good choices here. I'm on the right path. I know he's with me, which means I'm not messing up too bad, So
that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I truly appreciate it, Lauren. So thank you again, and have a great night.
You too. It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks for listening. If you have an experience where you have seen the hand of God or your higher power in your life, I want to hear about it. Please send an email to Sheila@beyondcoincidence.com. Have a great day.